Welcome to the Review Collective. We are a YouTube channel that focuses on discussing different topics, and in this case, we are reviewing a book. And today's deep dive is going to explore a really wild one.
Oh, totally. It's a massive paradigm shift.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine holding a piece of paper that proves a novel written in 1898 actively caused the sinking of the Titanic 14 years later.
Which just sounds like science fiction.
Right. But today, we are unpacking a text that makes exactly that terrifying claim. The mission for our deep dive today is to explore a philosophy that takes, the concepts of manifestation you might already be familiar with and just pushes them to their absolute radical extreme.
Yeah, extreme is the right word.
So the book is called The Law and the Promise, and it was written by Neville Goddard, published back in 1961. And the core claim here is entirely mind-bending. Goddard argues that human imagination doesn't just, reflect the physical world. He insists it actively creates it.
Yeah, down to the very last detail. And that's his core premise, really. Most of us, we go through life assuming the physical world is the hard, objective reality.
Right, the stuff we can touch.
Exactly. And we think our imagination is just this quiet little subjective room where we retreat to, daydream or worry. But Goddard flips that entirely on its head.
He does.
He states that all activity is fundamentally imaginal. So what you and I call objective reality is, according to him, solely produced through imagination.
So let's unpack this right away for the listener, because most of us treat our imagination like a mirror, right? We look at the facts of our lives, the bank account, our health, and our imagination just reflects those facts back to us, maybe with some anxiety layered on top.
Oh, usually with a lot of anxiety on top.
Yeah. But Goddard argues your imagination is actually a projector. You aren't reflecting the facts, you are beaming them into existence.
A projector is like the perfect metaphor for this. If your imagination is a projector, Goddard's philosophy is really all about learning the mechanics of how to deliberately load the film.
Which he calls, what was the term?
He calls it dwelling therein. Or, people who study his work today often call it living in the end. And the mechanical distinction here is crucial. There's a huge difference between thinking about a goal and thinking from the goal.
Because thinking about it implies separation, right? It implies you don't possess it yet. So your projector is basically just broadcasting a movie of your own lack.
Yeah, and the feeling of lack just creates more lack. He actually shares a fascinating story about Dr. M and his wife to kind of illustrate this.
Oh, the apartment building story.
Right, so they owned this piece of property with their office on it. And for 15 years, they had wanted to build an apartment building on the empty lot.
But they had no money, right?
Absolutely none.
Right.
I mean, doing it would have completely jeopardized the security of their existing business. So they had been dreaming about this building for a decade and a half, just stuck in a state of wishing.
15 years of just staring at an empty lot, hoping the universe would drop a bag of cash in their laps.
Which obviously never happened. But then they decided to apply Goddard's specific method. They stopped worrying about the sequence of events or where the money would come from.
Just loaded a new film.
Exactly. They physically drew up blueprints to anchor their visualization. And then, in their imagination, they started taking daily tours of the completed building.
Wow.
They didn't just picture the outside either. They mentally rented out the apartments. They walked the hallways. They even brought a specific, highly skeptical friend of theirs, a Mrs. X, into the imaginal scene.
They heard her voice, right?
Yeah, very clearly. In their minds, they heard her say, "Doctor, I think it's beautiful."
So they completely bypassed the construction phase. They just experienced the direct aftermath of it being a finished reality.
Yes. And Goddard claims this mental occupancy triggered what he calls a bridge of incidents. This is basically where the world is compelled to rearrange itself to match the projector's film.
And the bridge of incidents for this couple was wild.
Oh, it's insane. First, a stranger walks into their office. He's a contractor who usually never cold calls, but he was inexplicably drawn to their specific corner lot.
Just out of the blue.
Out of nowhere. They tell him they have no money, not even to pay for real blueprints. So he comes back days later with free blueprints he found in his own files that perfectly fit their lot.
You can't make that up.
Right. And then, without even being asked, he finds a finance company willing to cover almost the entire loan.
Unbelievable.
And it gets better. Finally, the contractor offers to finance the remaining balance himself out of his own pocket to be paid back slowly from future rentals.
So they didn't put a single penny down. The external world just did all the heavy lifting for them.
Not a penny. The building was constructed, the units rented out, And a month later, that skeptical friend, Mrs. X, came for a real physical visit.
And she said the line.
At the end of the tour, she looked at the doctor and said the exact words, "Doctor, I think it's beautiful."
That is, I mean, it's incredible. And to frame this for you listening, it's the difference between staring at a house on Zillow, scrolling through the photos and wishing you lived there,
Oh, right.
versus closing your eyes, mentally hauling all your heavy furniture inside, deciding where the couch goes, and actually sleeping in that master bedroom every single night. You have to occupy the space.
That's a brilliant distinction. Goddard actually uses the phrase perpetual construction deferred occupancy to describe how most people fail at this.
Oh, I love that phrase.
Yeah, because people are constantly building their dream houses in their minds, right?
Yes.
They read the books, they make the vision boards.
But they never mentally move in.
Exactly. To make the projector work, you have to abandon yourself to the state you desire. You occupy it until it feels completely natural. The physical manifestation is just like an echo of that naturalness.
Okay, but if achieving this state requires moving into a new future, that brings up a massive structural question. What about the past?
Oh.
I mean, are we just permanently stuck with the physical facts and the traumas of our history? Moving into a new house is one thing, but unbreaking a shattered foundation is entirely different.
And this is where Goddard's work moves from, radical to deeply controversial. He introduces a concept called revision.
Right.
He describes it as literally turning the wheel of time backward. He believed that if the past was originally created by an imaginal act, it can be unmade by a new imaginal act.
Unmaking the past, I mean, that sounds like science fiction. How does someone unmake a historical event in practice?
Well, let's look at the case study of a woman who had suffered from a weak, intensely painful back for 39 years.
39 years.
Yeah. And the condition was structurally traced back to a childhood accident where she fell backward off a very high swing. She had spent a fortune on doctors, but the pain was just a constant physical reality.
Right.
So after hearing Goddard speak on revision, she decided to test the theory. She didn't just imagine her back feeling better in the present. She went back 39 years in her mind.
So she mentally time traveled to the exact point of origin.
Precisely. As she lay in bed, she vividly felt herself back on that swing as a child. She felt the texture of the ropes, the rush of the wind.
Wow.
But this time, as the swing slowed down, instead of falling backward, she imagined jumping forward and landing safely and solidly on her feet.
Changing the event entirely.
Yes, she imagined running to her mother in the scene to show her what she did. And she looped this revised scene over and over until she fell asleep.
And what happened?
Within 2 days, her chronic pain began to recede. Within 2 months, a 39-year physical condition that medical science couldn't fix had completely vanished.
Okay, hold on. I have to push back hard on this on behalf of the listener, because I understand rewriting a personal narrative for emotional closure, right? Therapy does that all the time.
Sure.
But structurally, her spine was physically damaged. Even if the past is a continuous structure in her mind, X-rays exist. Are we really saying her revised memory reached back in time and altered the bone density and the physical trauma of her spine in the present?
It's the ultimate critical question. And to understand Goddard's answer, you really have to accept his view that the physical world is entirely an illusion.
Just a shadow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Merely a shadow cast by the mind. Goddard argues that man and his past are one continuous lung structure. We think of the past as dead, fixed history, left behind us on a timeline.
But he says no.
He says the past is still living. It's still operating just below the threshold of your surface mind, actively causing your present circumstances. The causes of any present suffering are just unrevised scenes of the past.
So the past isn't a fixed trail behind you, it's the invisible root system of a plant. If a leaf is dying today, it's because a specific root is damaged. You don't paint the leaf, you replace the root.
Exactly. When you revise the scene, you aren't just engaging in wishful thinking or psychological denial. You are literally pulling the corrupted root out of the continuous structure of your life.
And without the root, the physical symptom, the back pain, has nothing to sustain it, so it dissolves.
Exactly. And there's another great example of a man named F.B. who used revision on something much more immediate.
Oh, the real estate letter.
Yeah. He received this highly negative letter from a real estate agent telling him his land wouldn't sell, the market was entirely dead, and he should expect a bleak, indefinite wait.
So a physical piece of evidence telling him he's stuck.
Right. But FB didn't argue with the agent or accept the fact. He just took the letter, and in his imagination, he rewrote it.
Just edited the facts.
Yeah, he imagined the agent eager to take the listing. He imagined standing in the office, physically shaking the agent's hand and hearing the agent say, "It was a pleasure doing business with you."
And let me guess.
Days later, the agent called out of the blue, said he had sold the lot, and when FB went to sign the papers, the agent shook his hand and parroted those exact revised words.
It's like he accessed the source code of his own reality and just typed in a patch.
That's a great way to put it.
But, if achieving this state requires such intense hyperspecific sensory visualization, like hearing exact phrases or feeling the wind on a swing that poses a massive problem for most people,
How so?
trying to vividly visualize a new car, a new house, and a healthy bank account all at once is mentally exhausting. How does Goddard solve for the cognitive overload of trying to imagine a completely new, multifaceted life?
He actually recognizes that exact problem. The fuel for the projector, according to Goddard, is sensory vividness combined with mood.
Okay, mood.
Yeah, he called the sensory part spiritual sensation, using imaginary sight, sound, touch, and smell to give the mental image the tones of reality. But for those who find it exhausting to visualize every single detail, Goddard offers a very specific shortcut.
Which is?
Capturing the overarching mood.
How does that shortcut actually function in practice?
Goddard points to the story of a 55-year-old woman who was in a really desperate spot. She needed a job, a car to get to the job, money for rent, and proper clothes for interviews.
A lot of moving parts.
Too many. When she tried to imagine having all these things, it was just too much. She got exhausted and anxious, trying to simultaneously visualize a car, a wardrobe, and a bank account.
Right, because the effort itself creates friction, which defeats the purpose. It just reminds you of everything you lack.
Precisely. So instead of imagining specific physical items, she just decided to capture the feeling of having it all resolved.
Oh, I see.
As she was falling asleep, she abandoned the details and just kept repeating a single phrase. "Isn't it wonderful? Something marvelous is happening to me now."
Just basking in the relief of it.
Yeah, she cultivated the deep joy that would naturally accompany all her problems being solved. She fell asleep in that specific mood for 2 months.
Let me guess. The universe didn't deliver a car, a job, and clothes individually. It delivered a single, comprehensive solution.
A completely unexpected one. A casual acquaintance of hers happened to go to New York and happened to run into an old friend of this woman's whom she hadn't seen in 25 years.
No way.
Yes. And this old friend had become incredibly wealthy. For reasons unknown, he never even contacted the woman directly. He sent her a certified check for $2,500.
Wow.
He then set up a monthly income for her that covered a spacious apartment, a car, clothes, everything. And eventually, he signed legal papers guaranteeing her that income for the rest of her natural life.
All from her repeating, "Isn't it wonderful?"
All from the mood.
So it's like mood is the climate of your life, and the specific events, the checks, the jobs, the cars are just the local weather that naturally forms in that climate. You don't micromanage the weather, you just change the climate.
That is the perfect way to look at it. Goddard actually quotes Winston Churchill, who said, "This is an age in which the mood decides the fortunes of people rather than the fortunes decide the mood."
That's a powerful quote.
Goddard insists that moods are not the effects of our circumstances, they are the invisible causes of them. We think we are happy because we got the money. Goddard says we got the money because we first assume the happy feeling of the wish fulfilled.
It completely reverses how we think about cause and effect.
It does. And if you want an example of intense spiritual sensation forcing a specific outcome, look at the man who wanted to win the 5-10 pool at the Caliente racetrack.
Oh, the famous goose pimples story.
Yes. He didn't just vaguely hope to win.
Yeah.
In his imagination, he stood sorting his 6 winning tickets, and he imagined the feeling so intensely with such spiritual sensation that he literally broke out in goose pimples in his living room.
A physical reaction to an imagined event.
Exactly. He felt the cashier handing him a massive stack of money, which he mentally shoved into his shirt. 3 weeks later, he went to the track, and it played out exactly as he imagined, right down to the physiological reaction.
And he won, what was it?
He walked away with $84,000.
So this brings us to a terrifying crossroads. If your mood creates the climate and the bridge of incidents forces the world to deliver your $84,000, how does this affect the things we create just for fun?
Wow.
I mean, if imagination is the only cause of reality, what happens to fiction?
According to Goddard, there is no such thing as fiction.
None at all.
None. If imagining creates reality, then the things we write, the stories we make up, are actually literal blueprints we are inserting into the machinery of the world. Today's fiction becomes tomorrow's physical fact.
Which brings us back to the Titanic.
Yes, To prove this, Goddard points to one of the most chilling literary coincidences in history. In 1898, an author named Morgan Robertson wrote a novel called Futility.
Okay.
It was about a fabulous, massive Atlantic liner, far larger than any built at the time. He loaded the ship with rich, complacent people and wrecked it on an iceberg on a cold April night.
And this was published in 1898, 14 years before the Titanic.
14 years before. The White Star Line built a ship remarkably like the one in the novel. Robertson's fictional ship was 70,000 tons. The real one was 66,000.
Close enough.
The fictional ship was 800 feet long. The real one, 882. Both carried around 3,000 people. Both lacked enough lifeboats. Both were labeled unsinkable.
And they both sank in April.
Yes. On an April night in 1912, the real ship hit an iceberg and went down. And Robertson called his fictional ship the Titan. The real ship was the Titanic.
Wait, does this mean writers are accidentally cursing or blessing people with their stories? Are we recklessly throwing imaginal boomerangs?
Goddard leans toward exactly that. Causation is purely mental and singular. Far off from the scene of action, invisible to everyone, is an imaginal activity directing physical events like a guided missile.
That is hairy.
He quotes William Butler Yeats, who believed that all imaginative men are forever casting forth enchantments. We think causation is physical, that an iceberg rips steel in the real world.
But Goddard says the author's mind did it.
Goddard says the imaginal act of the author caused the builders to build the ship, caused the captain to ignore the ice warnings, and caused the disaster.
I mean, that is staggering.
He shares another story about a modern author, E.B., who wrote a fictional story about a heroine who goes on vacation to Stowe, Vermont, deals with an incredibly selfish companion, decides to break her pattern of subservience, walks out, and subsequently receives a marriage proposal.
Let me guess. The imaginal boomerang caught up to her.
Months later, E.B. was unexpectedly invited by a friend to a summer place in Stowe, Vermont. She arrived, found her hostess acting horribly, broke her own lifelong pattern of duty, walked out, went back to New York, and a few days later received a marriage proposal.
Just like her character.
Exactly. In her real-life case, she refused it. But the structural beats of the fiction played out flawlessly in her physical reality.
It makes you want to be incredibly careful about the stories you tell yourself and the anxieties you entertain. If there is no fiction, every passing anxiety is a loaded gun.
It really is.
But this leads us to the ultimate question. If we have this reality-bending power, just using it to get checks, apartments, and racetrack winnings feels like using a quantum supercomputer to play Pong.
Oh, completely.
There has to be a larger structural reason for why human beings possess this terrifying ability.
And that brings us to the final and really the most profound part of the book, what Goddard calls the promise.
The promise.
Yeah. This is where Goddard moves from being a practical teacher of manifestation to a deeply esoteric mystic. He says that life on Earth, with all its struggles, tragedies, and desires, is essentially just a kindergarten for image making.
A kindergarten.
Yeah, we're here to learn how to use the power. But the true endgame, the ultimate purpose of human existence, is not acquiring toys. It is a mystical experience of awakening.
Awakening to what, exactly? What does escaping the kindergarten actually look like?
Well, Goddard describes his own intense, literal visions of this process. He experienced waking up to find himself entombed within his own skull.
Entombed in his skull.
Yes, he had to physically squeeze himself out of the base of his skull, inch by inch, experiencing what he calls a literal birth from above. He came out to find an infant wrapped in swaddling clothes on the floor.
That is incredibly intense.
It gets deeper. In a later vision, he met David from the Bible. But David was not a historical figure to him. David revealed himself as Goddard's own son.
Wait, David called him father. What is the actual theology behind the skull in David?
It's the core architecture of Goddard's entire life's work. He believed that God essentially died to become man. God deliberately went to sleep, took on the severe limitations of humanity, and is currently dreaming the dream of your specific life.
So we are God dreaming.
Yes. The crucifixion wasn't an ancient historical event on a wooden cross. It happens on the skull of every human being. God is crucified on you.
Wow.
And he did this so that man could eventually awaken, experience this birth from the skull, and realize that he is, in fact, God the Father. David calling you Father is the ultimate symbol that you've awakened to your true identity as the creator of the universe.
Okay, to put this into a modern context for you listening, it's like playing an incredibly immersive virtual reality game. You put the headset on, and the graphics are so flawless, the pain and the joy are so visceral, that you completely lose yourself in the character you're playing. You forget you're the one wearing the headset sitting safely in your living room.
That's exactly it.
You fight for money, you stress about your health, you try to build a house, until eventually you beat the game, the headset comes off, and you wake up and realize you were the programmer the whole time.
Yes. And learning to manifest the toys, the money, the health, the apartments is just you learning the cheat codes of the game while you're inside it, just to prove to yourself that it's a game.
Right.
Once you realize the world is clay and your imagination is the potter, you stop caring about the clay. You are ready for the promise. You are ready to wake up and take the headset off.
What a phenomenal journey. I mean, we have gone from the highly practical mechanics of living in the end, mentally moving into an apartment before it's built, to pruning the living root system of the past through revision.
It's a lot to take in.
We've seen how the climate of your mood dictates the weather of your life, how fiction mathematically becomes fact, and finally, arrived at the mystical realization that the entire physical world is just a training ground for you to awaken to your own divine nature.
It demands a total, uncompromising shift in personal responsibility. If Goddard is right, there is no one outside of yourself to blame and no one to beg. You are the sole operant power of your reality.
So, we want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over. If our casual daydreams, our passing anxieties, and our default moods are constantly shaping reality without us even knowing it, what did you accidentally imagine into existence today before you even realized you're doing it? What reality are you unknowingly building right now? Thank you for joining the Review Collective. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content.